As the days grow shorter and a familiar chill begins to creep into the morning air, a question starts to bubble up in communities all across the country. What will this winter be like? This year, that question carries a special weight. After a few relatively straightforward winters, there is a growing buzz among meteorologists and everyday citizens alike that the winter of 2025 to 2026 is shaping up to be something entirely different. People are talking, and they are worried. They remember past winters that brought life to a standstill, with crippling snowstorms and biting cold that seemed to last for months on end. The whispers are getting louder, suggesting we should all brace for a season of extremes. The anxiety isn't just based on old memories or folklore, it's rooted in complex signals we are seeing in our global climate system. The massive Pacific Ocean, which acts like a giant engine for our weather, is in a state of transition. This change is sending ripples across the atmosphere that will directly impact the temperatures we feel and the storms we face. Forecasters are pointing to a setup that favors volatility, meaning we could see dramatic swings from mild, spring-like days to sudden, brutal Arctic blasts. This lack of a clear, dominant pattern is what has everyone on high alert. It opens the door for a winter that could be memorable for all the wrong reasons. This season is not about a single, simple forecast of cold and snowy or mild and wet. Instead, the story of this winter will be one of conflict and unpredictability. It's about the atmosphere being in a constant battle, with warm and cold air masses clashing violently and frequently. For many parts of the United States, this could translate into a messy, high-impact winter. The kind of winter where you need your snow boots, your rain jacket, and your emergency kit, all within easy reach. The feeling is that we are on the cusp of a season that will demand our attention and our respect from the first snowflake to the final thaw. So, as we put away our fall decorations and start thinking about the holidays, it's wise to also think about our winter readiness. The discussions you hear online, on the news, and over the fence with your neighbor are happening for a good reason. The scientific data points toward a winter that won't be quiet or gentle. It suggests a season full of surprises, with the potential for powerful storms and significant disruptions. This essay will walk you through why experts are concerned, what specific patterns are causing this unique forecast, and most importantly, how you and your family can prepare for the wild ride that may be ahead. To understand why this winter could be so unusual, we first need to look far out into the vast Pacific Ocean. Along the equator, the ocean's surface temperature can shift between three main phases, collectively known as the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO. These phases act like powerful puppeteers, pulling strings that influence weather patterns all across the globe, especially in North America. The simplest phase to understand is El Niño. During an El Niño winter, the surface waters of the eastern Pacific Ocean become warmer than average. This extra warmth pumps heat and moisture into the atmosphere, often shifting the jet stream, a fast-moving river of air high above us, further south across the United States. What does an El Niño winter typically mean for the U.S.? For many, it brings a very distinct type of weather. The southern shift of the jet stream often leads to a wetter-than-average winter for California and the entire southern tier of the country, from Texas all the way to the Carolinas. This pattern can bring much-needed rain and mountain snow to the southwest. At the same time, the northern parts of the country, like the upper Midwest and the Pacific Northwest, tend to experience a milder and sometimes drier winter than they are used to. El Niño acts as a strong guiding hand, creating a more predictable, though not always welcome, winter season for millions. On the opposite end of the spectrum is La Niña. During a La Niña event, the same equatorial Pacific waters become colder than average. This cooling has the reverse effect on the atmosphere. It tends to create a more amplified, wavy jet stream pattern over North America. This setup typically brings colder and stormier conditions to the Pacific Northwest and the northern plains. Meanwhile, the southern United States often experiences a much warmer and significantly drier winter. La Niña winters are notorious for fueling drought conditions in places like Florida and Texas, while burying the northern Rockies and the Great Lakes region in heavy snow. Like El Niño, La Niña provides a relatively clear roadmap for what to expect. But what happens when the ocean is neither unusually warm nor unusually cold? This is the third phase, known as ENSO neutral. During a neutral year, the sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific are near their long-term average. Without the strong guiding influence of either an El Niño or a La Niña, the global atmospheric pattern becomes much more chaotic and less predictable. Other, weaker climate drivers can suddenly take the lead, and the jet stream is free to wander and buckle in more dramatic ways. This is the state we are entering now, and it's the primary reason why forecasters are signaling a winter of high volatility and potential extremes. This winter we find ourselves in that tricky middle ground, an ENSO-neutral state. After a rapidly fading El Niño, the Pacific Ocean hasn't committed to a full-blown La Niña. Instead, it's hovering in the neutral zone, but with a slight tilt or lean towards La Niña conditions. Think of it like a spinning top that has lost its strong, steady momentum. Instead of leaning predictably in one direction, it starts to wobble erratically. This wobble in the atmosphere is what makes forecasting so challenging for the upcoming season. Without a dominant El Niño or La Niña to steer the weather, smaller and more chaotic factors can suddenly take the driver's seat. One of the biggest concerns during a neutral winter is the behavior of the polar vortex. The polar vortex is a large area of very cold air and low pressure that typically sits over the North Pole. In a stable winter, it stays mostly locked in place. However, in a neutral pattern, the jet stream can become weaker and wavier, allowing lobes of that frigid Arctic air to break off and plunge southward into North America. This is what leads to the infamous Arctic blasts that can send temperatures plummeting far below average for days or even weeks at a time. The lack of a strong Pacific signal makes these polar vortex disruptions more likely, setting the stage for sudden and severe cold snaps. This atmospheric setup is also a perfect recipe for major storms. When lobes of Arctic air dive south, they inevitably clash with the warmer, more moist air to their south. This sharp temperature contrast is the fuel for powerful storm systems. Instead of a consistent storm track that repeatedly hits one part of the country, a neutral winter can feature a highly variable and active storm track. This means major snowstorms, ice storms, and heavy rain events can pop up in different places throughout the season. The Ohio Valley and the East Coast in particular often become battlegrounds where these air masses collide, leading to a volatile and messy winter mix. The unpredictability is the key takeaway. In an El Niño or La Niña winter, we have a general idea of which regions will be warmer, colder, wetter, or drier. In a neutral winter like the one we are facing, those lines become blurred. A region could experience a week of unseasonable warmth followed immediately by a week of brutal cold. A storm system could track toward the Great Lakes one week and the Mid-Atlantic the next. This constant shifting and high potential for extremes make it essential for everyone to be prepared for anything. It's a season where the forecast for next week could look drastically different from the forecast today, making vigilance and readiness more important than ever. When forecasters look for clues about an unpredictable winter, they often turn to history, searching for a past season with a similar atmospheric setup. For the upcoming winter of 2025, one of the closest recent analogs is the memorable and brutal winter of 2013 to 2014. That season also featured a transition into a neutral ENSO state and a frequently disrupted polar vortex. The similarities are striking enough to serve as a potential, albeit imperfect, blueprint for what we might experience. The 2013 to 2014 winter became infamous, especially east of the Rockies, for its persistent and punishing cold. The term polar vortex entered the mainstream vocabulary as wave after wave of Arctic air descended upon the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast. That winter, cities like Chicago and Detroit experienced one of their coldest and snowiest seasons on record. The relentless cold led to near-record ice coverage on the Great Lakes, which in turn fueled powerful lake-effect snowstorms that buried communities downwind. The storm track was also incredibly active along the East Coast. A series of potent nor'easters marched up the coastline, delivering heavy snow and blizzard conditions from Washington, D.C. to Boston. Meanwhile, just as the current forecast suggests, the West Coast remained largely warm and dry, exacerbating a growing drought. The parallels between that historic winter and the forecast for this year are a major reason for the heightened concern. However, no two winters are ever exactly alike, and there will likely be important differences this year. While the 2013 to 2014 season was defined by its relentless cold in the east, the current forecast suggests more of a back-and-forth battle. We may see similar Arctic outbreaks, but they could be interspersed with periods of significant warmth, leading to more dramatic temperature swings. This whiplash effect could create its own set of problems, including a greater threat of freezing rain and ice storms when precipitation falls into shallow layers of sub-freezing air at the surface. The storm track might also be slightly different, potentially bringing more significant winter weather to the Ohio and Tennessee valleys than was seen in 2013 to 2014. Another interesting parallel is the hurricane season that preceded that winter. The 2013 Atlantic hurricane season was remarkably quiet, much like the 2025 season has been so far. This can sometimes be an indicator of the broader atmospheric patterns that will persist into the winter months. The comparison to 2013 to 2014 doesn't mean we are doomed to repeat it exactly. Instead, it serves as a valuable case study. It reminds us of what is possible during a volatile neutral winter. It highlights the potential for sustained cold, major snowstorms, and a stark contrast between a frigid east and a mild west, providing a crucial warning to prepare for a high-impact season. This winter, the United States is expected to be a country divided, with a weather map that tells a tale of two very different seasons unfolding at the same time. The primary dividing line will likely be the Rocky Mountains. To the east of this Great Barrier, many Americans should prepare for a winter that is colder than what we have experienced in recent years. The heart of this cold is forecast to be centered over the northern plains and the upper Midwest. States like the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, along with the Great Lakes region, are bracing for what could be a truly brutal winter, with frequent and strong Arctic fronts delivering sustained periods of below-average temperatures. This core of cold air is expected to expand and sag southward and eastward throughout the season. The Ohio Valley and parts of the Northeast are also forecast to see below-average temperatures for the winter as a whole. However, in these regions the cold may be less persistent and more characterized by sharp, sudden drops in temperature between milder spells. This back-and-forth pattern will make it feel like a true winter battleground. In stark contrast, warmth is expected to dominate other parts of the country. The entire West Coast, from Washington State down to Southern California, is likely to experience a warmer-than-average winter. This warmth is also predicted to extend across the southern tier, including southern and central Texas and all of Florida. The precipitation forecast reveals a similar stark division across the nation. The same regions expecting the brunt of the cold are also forecast to be in the crosshairs of an active storm track. The Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Northeast are all predicted to see above-average precipitation. For these areas, that means a higher potential for significant and frequent storm systems that could deliver a mix of heavy snow, sleet, and freezing rain. This active pattern is the classic result of cold, dry air from Canada repeatedly clashing with warmer, moisture-laden air from the Gulf of Mexico, with the battle zone setting up right over the nation's midsection and east coast. Meanwhile, other parts of the country are likely to be looking for rain that may not come. Drier than normal conditions are expected along much of the Gulf Coast, from Texas through Florida, and extending up the entire West Coast, including the typically damp Pacific Northwest. This pattern is a classic signature of a La Niña-leaning winter, and it could worsen drought conditions in these already dry regions. So, while someone in Indianapolis might be shoveling snow from their third storm of the month, a person in Los Angeles could be experiencing another sunny, warm, and dry day. This sharp contrast will be the defining feature of the winter of 2025. With a forecast calling for frequent clashes between Arctic air and Gulf moisture, it's really no surprise that a volatile and stormy winter is expected for a large part of the country. The regions most likely to be in the so-called battle zone are the Midwest, the Ohio and Tennessee valleys, and the Northeast. For these areas, the prediction of above-average precipitation doesn't just mean a little extra rain or snow, it signals the potential for multiple, high-impact winter storms from December through February. These storms could be complex and messy, driven by the dramatic temperature swings that are characteristic of a neutral winter. Instead of simple snow events, we could see more mixed precipitation nightmares. One of the greatest concerns this winter is the increased risk of significant ice storms. Ice storms occur when rain falls through a shallow layer of freezing air at the surface, coating everything, trees, power lines, and roads, in a heavy glaze of ice. These are honestly some of the most dangerous and disruptive winter events out there. The forecast for a whiplash winter, with temperatures fluctuating around the freezing mark, creates a perfect setup for ice. The Ohio and Tennessee valleys are considered a particular hotspot for this threat, where warm, moist air from the south frequently overruns shallow, cold air dammed up against the Appalachian Mountains. A major ice storm can cause widespread power outages lasting for days and make travel nearly impossible. Of course, the threat of major snowstorms also looms large. For the Great Lakes and the interior Northeast, the combination of deep cold and an active storm track could deliver several blockbuster snow events. The potential for frequent polar vortex disruptions means there will be plenty of cold air available to turn moisture into snow. Furthermore, the Great Lakes themselves could become snowmaking machines. If the lakes don't freeze over quickly due to the back-and-forth temperatures, they will provide abundant moisture for intense lake-effect snow bands, leading to staggering snowfall totals for communities downwind. Cities along the I-90 corridor from Cleveland to Buffalo should be especially vigilant. For the major metropolitan centers of the East Coast, from Washington, D.C. to New York and Boston, the winter could bring a series of nor'easters. These powerful coastal storms feed off the temperature contrast between the cold continent and the relatively warm Atlantic Ocean. An active, wavy jet stream pattern, exactly what's forecast, can steer these storms right up the coast. Depending on the exact track and the amount of cold air in place, these systems could deliver anything from a soaking, windy rain to a full-blown blizzard with crippling snowfall and coastal flooding. The potential for an active nor'easter season is definitely one of the biggest stories for the tens of millions of people living in the I-95 corridor. While heavy snow and biting cold are the classic hallmarks of a tough winter, the dangers this year extend beyond the typical blizzard. The volatile atmospheric setup brings a heightened risk of other equally hazardous weather phenomena, including severe thunderstorms and even tornadoes. This might sound a little strange for winter, but a second severe weather season in late fall and early winter is a real and dangerous possibility, especially during a La Niña-leaning neutral year. When deep troughs of cold air dive into the central and eastern United States, the sharp cold front can act as a powerful trigger for explosive thunderstorms if it collides with sufficiently warm and humid air from the Gulf of Mexico. The primary risk area for these unseasonable severe weather outbreaks is forecast to be in the lower Mississippi River Valley and the broader Southeast. States like Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, and into western South Carolina are in a hot spot where the ingredients for tornadoes could come together multiple times. The 2013 to 2014 analog winter provides a chilling reminder of this threat. On November 17, 2013, a major tornado outbreak produced 73 tornadoes across the Midwest, a stark example of what can happen when a powerful winter-like system encounters unseasonable warmth. Residents in these regions should not let their guard down just because it's winter. They must have a way to receive tornado warnings at all times. The Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley are in a particularly precarious position, described by some forecasters as a true winter battle zone. In this corridor, the weather could swing wildly from one extreme to another. One week might bring a threat of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes on the warm side of a storm system. Just a few days later, as the system passes and Arctic air pours in, that same area could be facing a crippling ice storm or heavy snow. This makes preparing for winter incredibly complex. You need a plan for a power outage caused by ice, but you also need a plan for seeking shelter from a tornado. This triple threat of snow, ice, and severe weather requires a new level of awareness. It's crucial to pay close attention to the specific details of each approaching storm system. Don't just look at whether snow is in the forecast. Understand the temperature profile and whether ice is a possibility. Know if you are in the warm sector of a storm, where damaging winds and tornadoes could form. This winter demands a more nuanced understanding of weather threats. For millions in the central and southeastern United States, preparing for winter means being ready for much more than just a blanket of white snow. It means being ready for anything the turbulent atmosphere can throw at you. With a forecast that screams unpredictability, being prepared is not just a good idea, it's essential for your safety and comfort. The best way to face a volatile winter is to have a plan and supplies in place long before the first storm hits. Start with your home. Make sure your heating system has been serviced and is in good working order. Check your insulation and seal any leaks or drafts around windows and doors to keep the cold out and your heating bills down. If you have a fireplace or wood-burning stove, have the chimney professionally cleaned. It's also a great time to trim any tree branches that hang over your house or power lines, as the weight of ice or heavy snow can easily bring them down. Next, build a home emergency kit. This kit should contain enough supplies to last your family for at least 3 to 5 days without power or the ability to leave the house. Include non-perishable food, a manual can opener, and at least 1 gallon of water per person per day. Also pack a battery-powered or hand crank radio, flashlights with extra batteries, a first aid kit with any necessary prescription medications, and warm blankets or sleeping bags for every family member. Having portable chargers or power banks for your cell phones is also a critical modern necessity. Store your kit in an easily accessible place where everyone in the family knows to find it. Don't forget about your vehicle. Winter travel can be treacherous, so your car needs to be ready. Check your tires to ensure they have adequate tread, or consider switching to winter tires if you live in a region with heavy snow and ice. Make sure your battery is strong, your antifreeze is at the proper level, and your windshield wipers are in good condition. You should also assemble a winter survival kit for your car. This should include items like a snow brush, an ice scraper, jumper cables, a small shovel, sand or cat litter for traction, and a warm blanket, gloves, and a hat. Keeping your gas tank at least half full at all times will prevent the fuel line from freezing and ensure you can run the engine for warmth if you get stranded. Finally, stay informed. The most important tool you have this winter is reliable information. Have multiple ways to receive weather alerts, such as a NOAA weather radio and trusted weather apps on your phone. Pay close attention to forecasts, especially when a storm is approaching. Understand the difference between a winter storm watch, be prepared, a warning, take action, and an advisory, be cautious. Talk to your family about your emergency plan so everyone knows what to do in case of a power outage or if you get separated. A little bit of preparation goes a long way in turning a potentially dangerous winter storm into a manageable inconvenience. The winter of 2025 to 2026 is shaping up to be a season that really commands our attention. The signals from the Pacific Ocean and the atmosphere above point not to a single uniform forecast but to a period of high drama, sharp contrasts, and unsettling unpredictability. For many, this will not be a quiet or gentle winter. It promises a wild ride, with the potential for everything from brutal Arctic cold and crippling blizzards to dangerous ice storms and unseasonable tornadoes. The echoes of the volatile 2013 to 2014 winter serve as a powerful reminder of what is possible when the atmospheric drivers align in this particular way, urging us to take the forecast seriously. This is not a forecast to be feared, but one to be respected. Knowledge is power, and understanding the risks is the first step toward mitigating them. Whether you are in the frigid heart of the Midwest, the stormy battleground of the Ohio Valley, or the potentially dry southern tier, knowing what to watch for is crucial. The stark divisions on the national weather map mean that your winter experience will depend heavily on where you live. This seasonal outlook is a call to action, a nudge to prepare our homes, our vehicles, and our families for the challenges that may lie ahead in the coming months. The simple acts of building an emergency kit, servicing your furnace, and creating a family communication plan can make all the difference when a powerful storm bears down. Staying informed through reliable weather sources will allow you to make smart, safe decisions for yourself and your loved ones. This winter will test our resilience and our preparedness. It will remind us of the immense power of nature and the importance of being ready for its many moods. By taking proactive steps now, we can face the season not with anxiety but with confidence. Ultimately, winter will pass as it always does. The days will grow longer again and the warmth of spring will eventually win the battle. Until then, let us embrace the coming season with a healthy dose of caution and a strong sense of readiness. By preparing for the worst, we empower ourselves to safely enjoy the beauty that winter also brings. The quiet hush of a snowy landscape, the warmth of a fireplace, and the shared experience of weathering the storm together. Stay safe, stay warm, and stay prepared for the memorable winter that lies ahead.